you
Good
going,
morning.
dude?
How are you?
Yeah, pretty good.
Must be
Um,
pretty fresh where you are.
it was 1 degree when I woke up.
It's it's like the black metal weather, isn't it?
Yeah, like there's just fog everywhere. We live on a mountain, so it just gets kind of covered in fog. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. You can't go wrong. It's a little bit like Warburton, isn't it? That's beautiful at that time, any time of year.
Mm.
Um, how you going? How's the now the EP's out and about? You must be pretty happy that it's been released into the wild.
Yeah. Um, yeah, we worked on the EP for about a year, and people seem to be digging it. So I'm pretty stoked. I think it's much better than the last one, and I'm just really happy with the direction of it, and just like loving the whole visual side of the band and the that kind of world that we've been building with it as well. And yeah, I'm just excited to go and play some shows soon to celebrate its release.
The shows recently in Melbourne, yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. I've seen the band before, but did you think it really kind of come together then? Because it was just I mean, I know there was a even with the bit of I suppose guitar, misfunction that happened.
Yeah.
I thought it was an incredible show, man. Like it blew me away.
Yeah, yeah, that was like I really wasn't sure what was happening at first when that uh era started happening, and I thought we were gonna have to stop playing and just start the song over, but then Adrian, the drummer, just kind of knew what to do and kept that part looping, and it felt like a really professional, locked in moment, and it just kind of somehow we turned that fuck up into just like a triumphant moment of the set, and the atmosphere was great. And yeah, that Svalbard Melbourne show was definitely the best show of the tour and one of the best shows I think I've ever played.
Yeah, it was seemed. I think there was a yeah. I mean, it was a. I mean, that was a particularly that Melbourne lineup was a phenomenal lineup that I know that you had kind of curated. But yeah, that was just an amazing kind of yeah. I thought the tension and the energy was fucking phenomenal. And I've seen you in guises with other bands as well. So I thought it was yeah, it was an amazing performance. And the songs really translated well.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's so the whole kind of concept. I mean, you touched on it straight away from the artwork, the lyrical content. Did you envision that whole kind of concept? It was because it's going back quite a while now, isn't it? Really?
I guess the visuals are a collaboration between me and a guy called Patrick Galvin, who's a friend of mine who I've known for probably 15 years or something at this point. He's a fantastic artist out of Canberra. I guess his one of his probably biggest claim to fame is that he designed Parkway Drive's logo. He's done a whole bunch of killer art for a whole bunch of incredible bands, and I had this original idea for the first EP, "For You'll Never Find Peace Within Your Quiet," which was essentially a basically supposed to be a homage to We Lost the Sea's Departure songs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but like the
Yeah,
landscape with like the little guy just sort of standing in the middle.
absolutely.
And I kind of wanted to do my own version of that. And I sat down with Pat one day and we talked it all over. And from there, it kind of grew into this idea of each song having its own cover and all of those covers kind of coming together to create the bigger picture. And it wasn't always the plan that, I'd do a follow-up EP that would continue on with that vision, but it just kind of worked out like that. I just sort of I had this idea of the concept for True Heaviness as time, and I just had this picture in my mind of like a flat Earth sundial, and then from there it kind of evolved into being subdivided into the seasons, and the original mountain from the first EP sort of being on that as though that it was like the hands of the clock. And I think it's kind of like it's evolved into this concept, I suppose, but I feel like Run is the same concept, just expanding and repeating but and evolving, I suppose, each time. And I've got like a bunch of ideas in mind for where it goes next, but I kind of really love how, it started with For You and it's just like a little tree. And then throughout the rest of that EP, it goes up and up through this landscape. Then by the end of it, you're in outer space. And then we get to the next EP and it's looking back down on that landscape and it's like something entirely different and unexpected. And there's lots of different layers to the concepts with like there's like a astrological constellation thing. Like each song has its own sort of assigned constellation, and if you look at the artwork, those symbols are like all on the face of the sundial. And I'd what was I going to say? I'd sort of like, yeah, had this idea of splitting it into the seasons. And there's just, I guess lyrically it's not like super tied into any of that. So it's like, I think like lyrical concept, there's a lot of talk about time and whatever, and that I guess plays into it. But visually, I sort of like to think about it as though Run has like its musical universe and its visual universe, and conceptually they're not exactly like 100% intertwined. They cross
Mm.
over, but I like this idea that Run has sort of been building its own little visual universe in tandem with the music.
There's not and there's not too many people that are doing that anymore. You know what I mean? I think it's a kind of a. I mean, I know you you've worked in this the music industry and you're a huge music fan from a long time, but no one's kind of doing that anymore. There's a lot of effort and focus in what you're doing. I mean, I think it's wild. And it's fucking so creative.
Yeah, I would say I've taken a lot of inspiration from the Ocean in that regard because they're one band that puts that level of detail and focus and conceptualization into their artwork, and all their artwork is fucking incredible. But then they also have these incredible concepts for the lyrics that aren't necessarily tied to what's going on visually.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I think it's great. It's a good, they're one example who, you obviously recently toured. Um, so that's yeah, but I think it's just, I think people can get a little bit lazy. You know what I mean? They can
Mm,
tend to just do I mean, we all, we've got the albums that we like with the gore on the front cover and stuff, and but a lot of it's a bit throwaway, isn't it? Really, like I think it's
yeah.
for me as a listener, I find it quite pleasant that it's there's a focus and an effort in it. Like we really appreciate it. As listeners.
Yeah, I understand why, like, there's a lot of financial constraints in making music and spending a ton of money. Not that like Pat is extorting me with this. He does me a pretty good solid on the price because he really enjoys the collaboration and getting to do something different as well. So he cuts me a pretty good deal. But yeah, it does generally cost money to do things like this. And when you're trying to, pay for a recording and tours and getting a nice mix and master and stuff, it can be a little bit prohibitive to go as all out on the artwork as I have, I suppose. But I just love that part of the process almost as much as I love the process of creating the music. So, and I love records like that. I love bands that really put in a ton of effort to conceptual things, and so I just yeah really want to create something that if I was a listener, that would be if I hadn't started Run and Run had come along as it is and fallen into my lap as like a release that someone else had put out, like it'd be my new favorite band, and that's I guess what I wanted to make was like my favorite band.
That's yeah. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And I mean, you want, I suppose, because you're doing the vinyl and that as well. That's a bit of the joy of it, isn't it? To hold that and look at that artwork. I mean, I've only, like you were talking about before, I've zoomed in on the artwork and been blown away on a shitty big monitor, but to physically have that, which is, because you're doing that. I was going to say vinyl run, but that's you literally are. Like,
Yeah,
that's gonna look phenomenal. I think, like, is it got like fold outs of the artwork, or what's the?
no, at this point it's just
Yeah,
the cover of each EP because it's
yeah,
both EPs in the one, like an A side and the B side, and because I think together they create almost an album's worth of material, and it's like the genesis of the band, and these two visual concepts are very much linked. So it felt like putting them together made a lot of sense, getting both releases out on vinyl finally. And but I'd love to be able to do like some elaborate like fold out thing with all of the art on the inside, but there is, that's another 10 pieces of artwork.
yeah, yeah.
So that's yeah, gonna cost money. So I don't think Stiff Cut, the label that's doing it, would want to do something that extreme, but I think there will be some kind of lyric sheet insert in there that will have all of the artwork in like smaller sort of versions. But I don't know if you saw with the first EP, we did like a cardboard fold out
Yeah,
kind
that
of
was.
clamshell thing with all of the artworks printed individually in there because it was, the record came out at the start of the pandemic and everything was fucked and people couldn't get vinyl press and no one really knew what was happening in the future. And so I was just like, I want to get something that people can hold and be able to look at with this. So I came up with that idea of just doing basically an art set as opposed to a traditional physical format.
Yeah, no, I thought that was like super clever. You touched on the lyrics. Now, I think, without blowing smoke up your ass too much, because I like all the concepts of the band, but I think the lyrics are pretty phenomenal. Like, I think, obviously we've got the songs that are, got the season title, but not necessarily, and the themes, but also, you know, the title track and the end track. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think they they blew me away when I read the lyrics. I think it's just, it's pretty phenomenal. Like, it's kind of written like classic Prowse, and like that, it's
Classic
it's
what? Sorry.
classic kind of prose, like kind of
Oh,
like classic writing, and like almost poetry. They're not rhyming couplets. What I'm saying is it's phenomenally fucking well written. Like, it just, it's got a lot of weight to it.
yeah. Thanks. I suppose it like there is occasionally a bit of like a reflection of the seasons in the vibe of the songs and the lyrics. Like spring. It's kind of about like it's more of like a positive kind of it's a new day kind of beginning sort of style song, and I think that reflects that. And autumn is a pretty dark song and
Absolutely.
like lyrically, and it's just but yeah, like I've sung in a lot of bands over the years as you know, and when I was younger I wrote a lot about being angry at the world and angry at government and angry at religion and blah 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 blah, and I still am angry about a lot of things, but I don't really want to dwell on those feelings too much. So I've really tried to write about my perspective on life in a way that has a kind of bittersweet positivity to it. And been through a lot in the past few years with the cancer and everything. And I think a lot of people that I've had spoken to expected that, I would be writing quite a bit about that. But I really didn't want to do that either. Like we did one song about that. Everyone's cancelled, everything's cancer between the two EPs and I just that the intention with that was always just to make it a kind of palate cleanser almost to just get that off my chest so that I could then move on to kind of move back on to just what Run was sort of always supposed to be. And it's supposed to be like bittersweet, I think is the operative word. Like
Mm.
life can suck, but there's still a lot of beauty in it, and I want to, I want to be more positive and inspirational than I am negative and down in the dumps about shit. And
It's
it really
definitely,
helps me kind of get the shit that I am down in the dumps about off my chest and sort of see things in a more constructive way. And that's like I think like if it is about, my medical experiences in any way, it is that, that whole saga of my life really just sort of made me realize that I didn't want to kill myself and that life is actually pretty beautiful if you let it be.
yeah, it's good. I was going to say because that is certainly reflected across those two EPs, and then speaking to you personally as well, it's that introspection and self reflection is very evident in there. Like it is that mix of the dark and the light. Because I know you've also said that you sort of want the band to just be the kind of focusing on you and what had happened to you medically wise. That there was so much more to it.
Mm. Yeah, and just like I've sung in bands before, even on like, perhaps like a fill-in basis where lyrical content is just super, super negative. And I feel like if you're doing that all the time, getting on stage and singing about how this sucks and that sucks and humanity's garbage and blah blah blah, like it might be helpful to a point. People might resonate with it. It might be fun, but I think if you're doing that constantly, keeping yourself in a bad headspace, it can be not great for your brain.
So do you think where you're kind of sitting with the band at the moment, do you think you're kind of like, I suppose, in a kind of almost self-actualizing way, or kind of you're at the peak of your powers now? Because you seem like everything's, tracking pretty well. You seem to be, like it's the concept of the band, everything else is going quite well. I mean, it's obviously uplifting from the last couple of years for a lot of us, but yeah, do you think you really found your kind of peak at the moment? Like it kind of seems that way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw my latest post about the band, but I've actually just had a bit of a exodus with a few members leaving. So it's like I kind of have to rebuild in a way, but I don't feel like I'm slowing down. I've got new members for the tour to see it out, and I've got some other guys lined up in the wings to start working on some new material. And I suppose the concept with Run was that it was always going to be like my chariot and that no one else could stop me because I've been in plenty of bands over the years that sort of got to a similar point where it was like, okay, is this about to be a thing? And then a couple of dudes are like, actually, I want to move cities, or I'm going overseas with my girlfriend, or I want to focus on my career, that sort of thing, and bands fall apart, which is in a way a little bit similar to what sort of happened with Run with the lineup coming out of this EP. But I feel like visually, conceptually, just like I feel super motivated with it. I don't feel like I'm going to let that slow me down. I know what the next couple of releases are. Like I've got concepts and like a plan in place for, like another 7 inches, I suppose, a bit of a testing ground for these new writers to kind of see how it works with a new team. So moving forward, it'll be like a little 2 or 3 track EP kind of deal. And then I have like a pretty elaborate concept figured out for a 12-track album that will
Ah, fantastic.
continue on, pick up where the band sort of left off, and just take the vision further out into space and just keep expanding on Run. And yeah, it is a little bit of unfortunate timing, and I would have preferred to have seen this era out with the guys that wrote it all. But I think in the band sort of essentially being my solo project, but getting some guys on board and having everyone contribute as though it was their band, but having me still kind of call the shots as though it was
Yeah.
my solo project, perhaps led to a little bit of resentment that all just bubbled up and boiled over dramatically instead of sort of being figured out reasonably. And no shade to those dudes, like very thankful for all their contributions and to making the band what it is today. But I don't feel like it's going to slow me down significantly, and I have a grand vision for it that is still yet to be fulfilled. So full steam ahead as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I like it. As you said, there's no stopping the chariot, so that's damn exciting. I wanted to talk about the guests on the record because they worked really well, and I think they were all really quite different. So and then obviously, yeah, in the Melbourne show too, yeah, you had one of your guests live on stage, which I think was a highlight of the gig as well.
Mm.
So um, yeah, how did that come about? And you think it fits really well on that EP? It obviously work. I think it works sensationally.
Yeah, they're all friends of mine. I've known Joel for a very long time. Be coming up on close to 2 decades. I was, a fan of Amity Affliction from their demo when they first started playing shows in Brisbane. Me and Joel used to work together on a magazine called Death Before Dishonor back in the day, which was it was his magazine, and I was like the editor, and that was kind of my big break into getting into music journalism. And yeah, I've been on tours with Amity in the past, and I did a guest vocal on the Severed Ties album, their debut album. And so being able to kind of throw it back to him all these years later and collaborate on one of my songs was pretty sick, and he was down straight away. Like I had the idea of getting Joel onto a track from the start, but with the first EP, I didn't want to have any guest vocalists because I was like, this is my thing, and I think for the first one, it needs to be just me. Show the world that I'm more than just a fill-in vocalist, I suppose. Coming off the back of doing Vi Art and Psychroptic and even Colossus, which was kind of my band, but I didn't write any of that material. I just came along and sang it and re-recorded it. So yeah, just getting some guest vocalists onto the second EP felt like the right move. And John Floriani, Trophy Eyes, we became really good friends in like 2019 and have been tight ever since. And I was never like a gigantic Trophy Eyes fan originally. I kind of wasn't, I thought it was maybe a little bit naff and like wasn't really sure how to take some of his lyrics. Kind of thinking like, there's no way this dude is like legitimately singing about, some of the things he's singing about, like putting all the money that you spent right up my nose and stuff like that. Like and I was like, this dude's having a fucking laugh. And then I met him and was like, nah, no, this guy's for real. His lyrics are real as shit. And we got along real great. And I've spent a lot of time talking about, um, our songs and our approaches to music. And I was kind of showing him and some of our other friends, the demos of the new Run stuff as it was developing. And I had this chorus idea for summer, and I basically like as you hear it on the EP, it's like 90% as I wrote it, but I couldn't quite nail a couple of the notes and was just like, I feel like this chorus is almost there, but it's kind of missing something from being fully locked in. And so got John along to help me figure that out, and it was like made sense to just have him sing that bit and then throw in a couple of his heavy vocals as well. And it's the first time he's ever sang on a metal song, so it's pretty cool, I thought.
It's a great track, and when I first heard it, even when I reviewed it, I was like, oh, it's like it's super melodic and clean vocals, but then yeah, when you hear his heavies in that as well, but the balance of the song, it works spot on. Like yeah,
Yeah,
great explanation. Like yeah,
I think it really works. It kind of reminds me a lot of like Thrice, how they did
yes.
like a few kind of more post metally albums in the middle there. It sort of reminds me a lot of that when he's singing over our stuff. And then Sophie from Rub on Winter had a couple of ideas for having someone on Autumn as well, but that didn't quite work out. And but then eventually I was like, oh, 3 out of the 6 tracks with guest vocals is fine. That's plenty. And Winter is a song sort of about me and my wife's relationship, which is very strong and powerful, but also sometimes very volatile. Love isn't always easy. And I think in the dynamic of that song, having a female or a woman, probably the better way to say it, having a woman do the guest vocal on that really just sort of thematically made sense. And I thought it would bring a different type of variance to the sound, which it obviously did. And there was actually a little bit of disagreement in the band originally about her guest vocal because one of the guys was really didn't like her screams, didn't think they sounded like they fit, and I was kind of like, ah, no, I think it's sick. It's really contrasting. And then yeah, her so pushed ahead with that, and her singing is incredible. I when we got her in, like I didn't know that she could sing like that. Like she said she could sing, but I'd never heard it before. But she has like a full kind of, and it was almost, it kind of reminds me of like The Cause or like Sinead O'Connor or something.
Yeah.
Real ethereal and like classical kind of sounding. I think really elevates the song, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
And live it was fantastic at work. It was great. It was kind of like I always love that kind of the side appearance of the guest. It was just like, like it's, like the Melbourneites, we would have recognized the kind of in the crowd or whatever, but it just, I think it was a good performance point of view. It kind of come on and it was dramatic. It was great.
Yeah, hopefully at the show on the launch show this Saturday, both John and Sophie will be getting up to do their parts. So
Oh wow, fantastic.
should be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a big one. That's fantastic. You've also got coming up as well, the Colossus reunion or anniversary or whatever you want to call it. That's pretty damn exciting as well. Sorry to do a side tangent, but
No,
I'm
that's
a
fine.
I,
Um,
I great band.
yeah, Colossus was a lot of fun for the most part. A very dramatic band that obviously had a couple of blowouts in it with my involvement over the years. But I'm super excited to kind of get, because we never really got to play like a proper final show. And I think to celebrate 10 years of the record, like everyone's still friends. It's like we've been jamming and it's surprisingly tight because most of those dudes haven't really been playing in music continuously for the last well in the years since like I have. Um, so I was a little bit surprised at how tight we've been sounding, but I'm really excited for that show. We're gonna get the candles out. Like I bought some sick candelabras off Facebook Marketplace the other day that I'm gonna sort of
Excellent.
get get all painted up and decorated to kind of really sort of give it a level of production that we haven't had before and never got to do. And just I don't know. Well, there's a bunch of old Colossus songs for an album we were writing that never really had anything done with them, never got to be used. So we have been talking about potentially like see how this show goes. If people care, if we have fun, we may keep doing stuff from there. May put out an EP if it makes sense and everyone's into it. But at this point, it's kind of like a no expectations. Let's just play the
Yeah.
show, have some fun, and see how it goes, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. I think it's one of my favorite kind of Aussie albums. I mean, it's a crushing album. Like, just I was listening to it recently. It blows you away. Like, it's recorded well, but um, yeah, it's so intense. You know what I mean? And it was that way live as well. It kind of matched it really well. So that's exciting. You got anything else coming up? I know you're always a busy man between the radio show and running tours and that as well. Have you got some tours coming up yourself? Because it's been a pretty busy year.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I've the last month or so, I think I've been busier than I have ever been. Which is good. Like I'm busy with things that I want to be busy with. It's a nice place to be. Um, Even though I kind of would like a holiday at this point. I got I think like 3 or 4 more tours to see the year out. Got Health next month, which is going great. Every show's sold out except for Adelaide, which is getting there. Then in September, I've got Undeath touring
Yeah.
with Gutless and Resin Tomb for a real fucking killer death metal triple bill. And I think the week after Undeath is Volvadinia from South Africa with Melancholia and Pincer Plus for more of like a metalcore, deathcore tour. Then October, Disentomb celebrating 10 years of their Misery record and launching their new EP, Nothing Above, with Internal Bleeding from the USA coming out for their first ever Australian shows, and Honest Crooks coming out of like their last year or so of hibernation to do the tour. Uh,
Wow.
Delaquest, this really sick death metal band out of Melbourne, are on that tour as well, so that's going to be ripper.
Yeah, they're good dudes. I know some of their other bands. Yeah, but they're hectic. They are like that's just oof.
Yeah, gnarly stuff. And then that's it for my tours for 2024. I'm working on a bunch of stuff for 2025 at the moment, which will be announced in due time. But other than that, like the rest of my year is pretty mapped out, I think. Like there might be 1 or 2 more run shows if anything cool pops up, but I'm not putting any pressure on that at this point. I just want to get what we have booked for these launch shows out of the way. And to be honest, I'm more excited about working on new material than I am playing some shows. So
Yeah,
that's kind of going to be the focus for Run over the next 6 to 12 months is to just get some more material out there. I want to get a full length done.
yeah, that'll be huge. The concepts you were talking earlier, yeah, that'll be fantastic. So there's always sort of yeah, lots of irons in the fire, ready to go.
Mm.
Thank you so much for your time, and yeah, definitely people need to get to all the kind of launch shows. I'm really looking forward to Saturday night. Great lineup, and yeah, it'll be fantastic. And you've got so how many dates have you got for the launch coming up?
Just 5. So we've got the
Yeah,
Saturday headliner this week in Melbourne at the Evelyn, and then next week we go to Brisbane for the Cold Day in Brisbane festival with Justice for the Damned, 50 Lions,
yeah,
Diploid, a whole bunch of other really sick bands. It's kind of like a bit of a cream of the crop of Australian metal, punk, and hardcore. Really pumped on that festival. And then after that, we have a couple of weeks off, and then it's all just weekend stuff. Start of August, we go to Adelaide for the Southern Death Festival with Disentomb, Bremelin, and stacks of death metal and mostly death metal and deathcore kind of bands. Like, I think we're really an odd band out on that lineup. So hopefully it goes down okay. And then we go to Sydney to play with Psychroptic, which will be sick. We played with Psychroptic once before, and their crowd was really receptive to us, which I was a little bit surprised by. I wasn't sure how the old school Aussie metal technical death
yeah.
crowd would respond to blackened post metalcore, but they really frothed it, and I'm hoping that we get a similar result in Sydney. And then we got one show in Wollongong with Flaming Wreckage the next night, just to kind of make a more of a weekend of it, and then that's all that's planned for now.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you so much for your time and yeah, and your insight on the record. Record, amazing band live. Yeah, people need to get to those shows. They need to buy the record and the vinyl variations. So thanks again, Lachlan. Appreciate it. And I'll yeah, see you on Saturday.
Thank you, Mark. I enjoyed chatting. I'll catch you soon.
All right, take care, mate.